January 14th, 1963, Chicago.
Conference on Race and Religion, sponsored by the National Conference of Christians and Jews. Reverend King.
Rabbi Heschel.
It's a great pleasure to meet you.
Oh, the pleasure is mine.
It is also an honor.
Also for me. Thank you for speaking so eloquently for our cause today. Though I wasn't surprised, I've read all your books.
You must spend a lot of time reading.
You must spend a lot of time writing.
Not enough.
Actually, I've only read the books you've written in English.
Oh, and I thought you'd be reading a good Protestant like Reinhold Niebuhr.
Oh, I have been. As my teacher, he taught me that religious conviction can be turned into social action.
Good for him. Reinhold happens to be a good friend.
Oh, you chose a fine quote from him today.
I only steal from the best.
I think you can say borrow because you gave it back. Race prejudice, a universal human ailment, is the most recalcitrant aspect of evil in man.
Quoted perfectly. Perfectly. And I like your own words. Religion deals not only with the hereafter, but also with the here. Here, where the precious lives of men are still sadly disfigured by poverty and hatred.
You memorize pretty good yourself.
An overrated but occasionally useful ability.
And you said racism is blasphemy. Nobody spoke out as passionately as you did. Everyone else was so polite. This could have been a truly historic event. 200 clergy, whites and Negroes, finally together and talking about race.
Thank you. Now, first of all, it should not have been called a conference on race and religion, but a conference on race or religion. You say race, you speak differences. You say religion, surely we all want peace on earth, goodwill towards men, and racism, blasphemy. Man is made in God's ineffable image. You attack a man, you attack God. But aren't you being a bit polite yourself, calling everyone polite? That bishop called prejudice a feeble anachronism. An elegant label does not change its horror. It was as if he were accepting it with just the right amount of despair and a certain inevitability. I tend to go on.
But I couldn't have put it better myself.
It's possible you could have read A Stride Toward Freedom. Stride, yes, stride. March, walk, dance, sing, shout toward freedom. My Hasidic roots are showing.
Hasidism. It's a good tree.
The truth is, I always love a good tree.
Yeah, I've read your book on the prophets a number of times.
Some of my favorite people.
Of course, and mine. They fought for those too weak to fight for themselves. They spoke for the truth without fear.
And they knew how to use their words as weapons against injustice. A useful skill for people like you and me.
Oh, you think it was an accident we both borrowed the same quote from the prophet Amos today?
It's what we both want. That justice roll down like
waters and righteousness like a mighty stream. I feel as though we've met before. Of course, you've already talked to me in your books. Sometimes I've even answered.
Now, if you'd rather talk to me in person, you can pick up a phone. You hear me? Or you could still talk to me in your head. I might be smarter there.
I look forward to our next meeting.
It will be a great pleasure.
Also, an honor.
Also, an honor. Thank you. Thank you, thank you.
You're very welcome.
April 1st, New York. I'll be at another religious conference today at the Plaza Hotel, no less. I'm sorry you won't be there.
I hope the people aren't as polite as the last one.
Yeah, they will be. It's a banquet to honor Cardinal Baye. I'm hoping he'll help us to get the Jewish Catholic Declaration passed in Rome.
I wish you luck.
I may need it. Diplomacy isn't always my strong suit.
Oh, you'll be fine. I saw you in action, remember?
Oh, the Cardinal seems like a good man. I met him 2 years ago at another religious conference. He condemned anti-Semitic incidents in Argentina. And Pope John seems open. Not that we have a final draft.
Well, how long have you been working on it?
Almost 3 years. With over 50 other writers. We've been through 70 drafts. The last one was 2,000 pages. It's a little frustrating. But Catholic doctrine cannot continue to insist that Jews be converted to Christianity.
You are fighting racism, and right is on your side.
I wish everyone was as open-minded. Some of my Orthodox colleagues believe we desecrate the name of God if we talk, just talk, to a non-Jew.
You're a spiritual revolutionary, that's all.
I hope so.
Some of my Negro brothers are like that too, and think we shouldn't even be marching with whites. I mean, how is it that you're not prejudiced against Negroes?
How could I be? Moses' wife was from Ethiopia, and her Ethiopian father taught Moses practically everything he knew about God. And you, how can you not hate white people for all they have done to your people?
I did once, but not anymore. After college, I fell in love with a white woman and wanted to marry her. Life is complicated.
Hallelujah! And I quote, God's voice speaks in many languages.
Prophet Malachi.
Yes, and I'm going to use that quote at the banquet.
How can the cardinal not be pleased?
And what's on your calendar?
I'm off to Birmingham to see if we can't put an end to some of the segregation and violence there, also known as Bombingham.
Ah, be brave. You're a brave man.
This isn't brave. This is necessary.
It is.
2 weeks later, Birmingham jail, Good Friday. I'm in here for parading without a license. I've been here a week and I haven't seen Coretta and my new daughter since the day I brought them back from the hospital a week ago.
I'm so sorry.
See, I imagine talking to you, and I feel better.
Better would be being home with your family.
My lawyer smuggled me a copy of the Birmingham News before they put me in solitary, inside his shirt. Listen to this. White clergymen urge local Negroes to withdraw from demonstrations. I can't.
Of course not.
They insist the demonstrations are unwise and untimely. I'm writing back, secretly, of course, all around the margins of the newspapers.
Yeah.
And on the toilet paper inside my cell.
Yeah. Before you use it, I hope. Words, Martin, they save us. For you and me, they may even be messengers of sanity. Not to forget your namesake, Martin Luther. He nailed some words on the door of a church and started a revolution. Write on anything you need to write on. Underwear, hands, feet. Because when we are brave enough to share these words with the rest of the world, sometimes we can change what needs to be changed.
How dare anyone presume to think they know the timetable for another man's freedom?
That's good.
It's in the letter, which may be a little over the top.
Sometimes we're both a little over the top. Maybe that's why people listen.
I cite the martyrdoms of St. Paul and Socrates,
Socrates?
and my little daughter's tears when she was 6 years old and I had to tell her she wasn't allowed into a public amusement park because she was colored.
Break those hearts. That way there's a chance for some light to get through.
Yeah, and I quote Reinhold Niebuhr.
Good for you.
Yeah, and St. Augustine, an unjust law is no law at all.
Which is also Jewish law.
Thank you. And I cite Jefferson and Lincoln because they believed all men are created equal and knew that God's will and democracy's dream were the same thing. And Jesus because he insisted on responding to conflict with love.
Our ultimate weapon. You will win this battle, Martin. Just see if you don't.
I had such a good sermon planned for Easter.
This letter may end up being more important.
Let's hope so.
I wish you a happy Easter and a productive one.
And to you, Rabbi, a happy Passover.
One of these years, maybe you'll come to one of our seders. A year when, God willing, you won't be in jail.
2 months later, June 3rd.
Pope John XXIII died today. His ecumenical council was ready to publish the Jewish Catholic Declaration.
I'm so sorry. He was a good man.
He even contemplated the Vatican officially recognizing Israel.
Let us pray that he's replaced by as good a man.
Amen. Nine days later, did you get a special invitation?
Yes, I got a special invitation. Did you?
Yes, I did.
To the Kennedy White House?
Yes, to the Kennedy White House. Excuse me.
Oh, you're excused. But you're going to have to suffer anyway.
Well, of course. It's another conference of clergy talking about civil rights. I assume you said you would attend?
I said I would attend. And you?
Not only did I say I would attend, but I drafted a telegram to Kennedy saying that if he really cares about civil rights, he'll demand all religious leaders donate a month's salary towards Negro housing and education.
Audacious.
Yes, then we're on the same page. I said the hour called for high moral grandeur and spiritual audacity.
No, I wouldn't hold your breath for Kennedy taking it too seriously.
I wouldn't hold my breath. I need my breath. Reinhold Niebuhr's wife and my wife Sylvia both thought I looked frail the other day.
I can tell you, you're strong, Father Abraham. Like your telegram, strong and daring. You don't mind that I call you that, Father Abraham. And my staff as well. We all call you Father Abraham.
Why should I mind? My name is Abraham, and I'm a father. Besides, how could I feel anything but honored? You don't trust Kennedy?
Of course not. He's a politician. It's not that I resent his being a foot taller than we are.
Our 5'6" is still respectable.
But not tall.
No, but we make up for it in weight. Will you sign my telegram?
Of course.
Then only 199 names to go.
10 days later, I just had a private meeting with Kennedy. He doesn't think it's the right time for a civil rights bill.
When can it be not? When can it not be the right time?
He doesn't think it's the right time for a peaceful march on Washington either.
In Egypt, Moses kept telling the slaves they should leave. But they kept saying over and over that it wasn't the right time. If he had listened, I'd probably still be building pyramids.
Kennedy says he wants success in Congress, not a big show at the Capitol. And he's afraid some people won't vote for the bill if they feel being pressured into it.
I'm sure a lot of people thought the bus boycott came at the wrong time, too.
He tried to convince me not to march by telling me I was under surveillance by Hoover and the FBI.
Huh?
And that a sex scandal would not advance our cause.
It would not. A sex scandal would not. It would be serious.
I'll bet he was bluffing.
Then tell me about the march.
Right. We were thinking of marching on the Capitol building, but I think we should march from the Washington Monument to the Lincoln Memorial.
Abraham Lincoln's Memorial, good, good.
And I want to call it a freedom march instead of one for civil rights.
Some Hasidic rabbis believe that not only was every word that Moses heard on Sinai real, but also in the end they were all the same word. And that word was freedom. When will you have your march?
2 months. Will you be there?
Striding, marching, and stumping for freedom.
And let us pray the march will be a peaceful one.
And that Kennedy and Hoover keep their scandals to themselves. 2 months later, August 28th, it was extraordinary. I saw the whole march on television.
I wish you could have been there.
So do I. You show those pundits on Meet the Press, I'll tell you. They said it'd be impossible to bring more than 100,000 Negroes into Washington without violence. They forgot that God would have been marching with you.
It was more than 250,000 people, all colors, religions, and races.
Your speech was masterful. Masterful. The Lincoln Monument behind you and borrowing from the Gettysburg Address.
50 years ago, 100 years later, and the Negro still isn't free.
And repeating, let freedom ring from 9 times.
My speechwriters had told me to do less. For that matter, none of us knew I was going to say, I have a dream at all.
You inspired.
How could I not have been to see so many people standing peacefully for what we believe in? I wish you had been there.
I do too.
2 weeks later, September 15th, Birmingham. A blast of dynamite kills 4 Negro girls in Sunday school. The face of Jesus Christ in the stained glass window was blown out of the church. It makes me wonder, where was God?
My guess is he was watching and he wept.
4 innocent children gave up their lives for civil rights, but they didn't do it on purpose. I'm going to see Kennedy. This has to end. How do you do it? Most of your family was killed by the Nazis, and still you believe that nothing in this world is meaningless?
I believe that it was not God, but men who murdered 6 million people in the Holocaust, just as it was men in Birmingham who killed those little girls.
It's a mystery.
The mystery is not God.
Although God is a mystery.
Also a meaning beyond the mystery.
For my sermons and my speeches, I usually find the meanings.
It's lucky for all of us that you have sermon and speeches to give.
Let's hope this violence shocks the president into action.
So those little girls will not have died in vain.
But they will have died.
They will have died.
October 22nd, the Conference on Soviet Jews. How did it go?
You risked a lot setting it up. Thank you.
No, the persecution of my Jewish brothers and sisters is no different than the oppression of my Negro brothers and sisters. Yeah, I heard everyone at the conference agreed on a letter to send to the Soviet Union.
An appeal of conscience to the leaders of Soviet Russia, as if they had a conscience. They're burning prayer books, forbidding Jews to be buried in Jewish cemeteries, sentencing Jews to death on trumped-up charges. And most American Jews won't even take a stand. They eat their matzah at Passover, but they won't fight for their Russian brothers who are forbidden to make it. They're afraid to speak up, as if it could put them onto a train to Auschwitz. And they don't understand that they're in worse danger if they don't take a stand. I tend to go on.
That you do. But what you say needs to be spoken.
The appeal guarantees nothing.
Wasn't it you who said it's even possible that words can save us? Patience, Rabbi.
It's not one of my strong suits. When innocent people's lives are in jeopardy, I'm sorry, I should simply be saying thank you. Plus, I owe you a greater apology.
What for?
I should have been at your Freedom March in Washington for you and for myself.
Yes, you should have been.
My decision, it was careless, and stupid, and ungenerous.
Apology accepted.
I knew 2 other rabbis would be speaking. I didn't think I needed to be there.
I should have asked you to speak. If I had, would you have come?
Yes, I would have.
Then we're both sorry.
The rabbis you chose did well.
Well, luckily enough, people showed up.
I wish there had been one more. In future, I will be a better friend.
Thank you, Father Abraham. And I will be too. One month later, November 22nd.
Terrible day. President Kennedy assassinated.
Shot in broad daylight. It wasn't always easy between us. But in the end, he was my friend.
A terrible loss for civil rights, as well as for the country.
And the world.
In the end, he even took a stand for peace.
We were lucky he wasn't killed by a Negro.
6 months later, 1964, the Jewish Catholic Declaration. I spent all day chairing a meeting about it with 25 Jewish, Protestant, and Catholic clergymen.
I'm exhausted just hearing about it.
I imagine talking to you, and I'd feel better. I get upset.
You get things done.
Not today, when President Nasser and other Arab leaders are trying to stop its publication. We're trying to get Secretary of State Rusk to meet with members of the Jewish American Committee.
And he'd help with the Vatican?
We hope.
Smart. We need all the help we can get.
3 weeks later, New York. My sister Sarah died. My last sister. She took me in when I came here from Poland. She helped me make a home here.
Father Abraham, I'm so sorry.
I can't help thinking about my other 3 sisters who died.
Well, of course.
Devorah, so smart, murdered in Auschwitz along with her husband. Esther and Gittel, who used to tease me all the time. And my beloved mother. And I couldn't save any of them. Any of them.
Of course you couldn't.
Sometimes I think I should have stayed in Poland. Maybe I could have.
You probably would have been killed yourself.
A stronger man would have stayed there and died with them.
I understand. When I was a little boy, my grandma Williams died, and I jumped out our second-story window to be with her.
But you didn't die.
Nor did you. And you'd been offered a job in America. Your destiny was here. You couldn't know what was going to happen.
They were all innocent. And the Nazis killed them all.
I don't know how you make peace with that.
I devote my life to making sure no other innocent victims suffer as they did. So they will not have died in vain.
Two months later, September 5th, you've outraged everybody by your letter to what, 50 bishops and archbishops?
What choice did I have? The last draft of the Declaration insisted that all Jews be converted to Christianity, which would be spiritual suicide.
Still, to call the Catholic Church a Nazi operation.
I only said I was ready to go to Auschwitz anytime rather than convert.
So you only implied it.
Maybe I should have thought it out more before I said it. I'm not only being attacked by Catholics. Some Jews are blaming me for seeming ready to incur martyrdom.
Not always a useless strategy, martyrdom.
If you don't have something you're willing to die for, do you really have a life worth living?
Me? No, apparently. Others, maybe. You basically called the Pope a Nazi.
Well, it was meant as a metaphor, not a character assassination. I've been working on this declaration for 5 years. I've been nice. I've been patient. I've been reasonable. I suppose this last setback broke the camel's back.
Camels are strong, Heschel, like you. They're considered angels of God by many people in the Middle East. You'll probably get your declaration. Sometimes it's only baby steps.
Baby steps backwards are never as much fun as the big leaps forward.
At least you're still on your feet.
A week later, I have good news.
Well, it's about time.
It's a secret.
Friends keep each other's secrets.
The Pope is going to see me and one other delegate to discuss the declaration in Rome. God willing, we'll finally work out the kinks.
That's wonderful. Why is it a secret?
We don't want to insult any of the other people who have worked so hard to get this done. Besides, we've already had too many cooks.
Oh, this is a great honor.
It's a terrifying responsibility.
Perhaps you've noticed how often they go hand in hand.
Just setting up the meeting was hard. There's practically no time before the council votes, and first the Pope asked me to come on the Sabbath. Obviously, I had to say no.
Well, see, that's why it's you who's going. Of course you must observe the Sabbath.
The holiest day in the Jewish calendar.
Maybe he didn't read your book on the Sabbath as many times as I did.
It wasn't clear the first time?
Well, it takes time to understand how the day is a cathedral of time. Isn't that what you called it?
Yes.
A foretaste of eternity?
You remember?
So when do you go?
Another disaster. The day before the eve of Yom Kippur. Orthodox Jews are objecting because it's between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. A time we call the days of awe. But shouldn't we be filled with awe by everything we see and hear and know and always?
Thank you. Of course.
I'm going anyway. I'm scared I won't say the right thing.
The old Negro preacher always said, open your mouth and God will speak through you, like the prophets. You know about them. The next day, you're an inspiration. I've requested an audience with the Pope.
Smart. We need all the help we can get.
Who was already plotting with some cardinals to make sure it doesn't happen.
It will happen. I have a good feeling about this Pope. After all, he said he'd meet with a crazy old Jew named Abraham Heschel. A week later, September 14th, Rome.
How did it go?
I feel I have failed my people. Otherwise, fine.
What happened?
After the audience, the man I went with grabbed me and started yelling that I had desecrated the name of God and the name of Israel. Hilul Hashem v'Yisrael. At least tomorrow is the eve of the Day of Atonement. I have a lot of atoning to do.
What did you do?
The first half, I thought, went well. I recited a prayer in Latin and then in Hebrew. The Pope said, it's a beautiful prayer.
So far, so good.
But then we started speaking about the church, wanting to convert the Jews, and we began to argue. He refused to change the wording. I begged. I gave too many compliments. Sometimes I think I don't even make sense. And I kept trying to convince him the declaration had to condemn anti-Semitism.
Well, how dare anyone not condemn any kind of racism?
He wouldn't budge. He said it had been written by a committee. And committees are democratic.
The old I'm only a figurehead ploy. I bet he gives you the edict anyway.
He's in no rush now, I can tell you.
At first, Kennedy wouldn't budge either.
Toward the end of the meeting, the man who was translating for the Pope, probably 6'5", began mimicking my gestures.
I'm sure
It was horrible.
I'm sure it wasn't as bad as you think.
It was worse. When it was time to leave, to be generous, I offered the Pope any advice he ever wanted about the Jews. And he said, Rabbi Zolli is a very good friend of mine. Zolli was the chief rabbi of Rome until he converted to Catholicism.
A little slap in the face.
And now I get to be attacked by an army of Orthodox Jews for even talking about religion to anyone who might not be Jewish.
What? The Pope isn't Jewish?
We never discussed it.
Heschel, you're in Europe, where the Holocaust took place, where the Nazis killed your family. I can't imagine how hard this must be. Maybe you should let someone else carry on.
What? I have enough enemies who want to see me replaced, even though I am apparently the most published voice in Judaism today.
You have your grief and a fear that in any moment your people could be destroyed.
It's a fear based on history.
Well, your fear doesn't help you here. It clouds your judgment and muddies your thinking.
You think I'm incompetent? I am incompetent.
I think you're a genius.
Just not competent to complete a task to which I had devoted 7 years of my life.
I would just hate to see you sacrifice your goal for your ego.
Now what about your ego? Huh? And you have no fear? We have spoken enough.
Two days later.
Yom Kippur is over. If I have done anything to offend you, ever, please forgive me.
You have not.
Jews say that on Yom Kippur, We should say it every day.
About the Pope,
Yeah.
I was stupid. Of course, no one knows the stakes better than you.
I know you only wanted to help.
Civil rights has had so many setbacks recently. I may have been talking to myself, wondering if your friend Martin is really the right man for the job.
He is.
Besides, the Pope had to have admired your passion. And you spoke up, which is better than being silent. One of the reasons for the Holocaust, one of the reasons for slavery.
We speak up sometimes without thinking. But I said about your ego, it seems to me we could both of us be accused of having egos. And then sometimes neither of us has one. Because all we want, both of us, is to do God's will.
We do. In future, I will be more careful too.
Thank you. And now, the Day of Atonement over, we get to start afresh.
You fasted all day and prayed.
Yes, for Negroes and Jews, for the poor, for our country, and for forgiveness for myself. For when I might have written a letter to help someone in need, but instead I smoked a cigar.
Let's not be too harsh on ourselves.
On Yom Kippur, it's allowed.
You need your cigars and your cognac, just as I need my fried chicken and sweet potato pie. They offer us sweetness, and we see too much bitterness and grief.
And now is the time for joy.
Then I have good news.
But
The Pope is going to see me. I leave tomorrow.
you beat Hoover?
This time.
Ah! 2 months later, how did it go with the Pope?
I went, we talked, he smiled.
Good. After my visit, he probably needed a few laughs.
I said that there had to have been considerable progress in the world if the Pope would meet with someone named Martin Luther.
The first person successfully to defy the Catholic Church. Good one. What else?
He seemed to understand a lot about our struggle for civil rights, even optimistic about America putting the new laws into practice.
It should only come to pass. On the other hand, he's trying to postpone the vote on the Jewish Catholic Declaration.
Well, haven't 1,000 bishops signed a petition asking him not to?
If 1,000 bishops have any influence,
No, how many ultimately vote?
more than 2,000.
Your journey towards this declaration has been so difficult.
It's not so bad when I get to kvetch to a friend.
Anytime, Rabbi, anytime.
November 20th,
The declaration passed.
1,770 bishops voted for it.
And no conversion clause.
Instead, there's a prayer that all peoples will address the Lord in a single voice and serve him shoulder to shoulder.
Congratulations.
I probably would have put it differently.
With more words.
Probably.
Congratulations.
We celebrate.
We celebrate.
Woo-hoo!
January 5th, 1965.
Martin, what is it? Huh?
It's too terrible. I can't tell you. It's Hoover.
What?
The FBI has been taping my encounters with women in hotel rooms.
What?
Women, not my wife. They have everything. I have sinned, Rabbi, and I don't know what to do.
You will know.
He threatens to release the tapes to the world.
That would be terrible.
It would ruin everything we fought for.
He won't do it. Too many people love you. Does your wife know?
Coretta opened the package. He must have known I wouldn't be there. I mean, since he seems to know where I am every minute of the day and night.
How is Coretta?
As you would expect. As for me, I am more than mortified.
You work it out. She loves you. Plus she believes deeply in what you're doing.
Except for what I'm clearly doing on those tapes. Hoover included a note saying he hoped I would commit suicide.
Well, that we know you will not do, or you'll never be given a proper Jewish burial. Hoover is a sick man, afraid of life. But we, Martin, we choose life. Moses' words, his most important teaching.
More important than thou shalt not commit adultery?
For adultery, we can atone and make amends. Death, on the other hand, seems to be pretty final.
I don't know how Coretta will ever forgive me.
She's very religious, isn't she? And isn't Christianity all about forgiveness?
What's worse, I doubt if I'll ever be able to forgive myself.
Always, that's the hardest. I still blame myself for not having saved my family in Europe. But you will forgive yourself and make amends.
I don't know, Rabbi.
Oh, Martin, sometimes we lose control, all right? Plus, when you give your speeches and your sermons, there's so much inspiration coming through you, and then the shouting and stamping and applause. How could you ever know what to do with it all?
I mean, I'm always on the road. I never see my wife. This is no way to live.
I don't know what I would do if I couldn't be with my wife all the time.
Hoover followed me everywhere, to every hotel, every motel.
I wish he'd spend his time trying to find out who's been burning so many synagogues and churches. He must not break your spirit.
I will live the rest of my life with the fear of this being revealed.
You depend on the FBI to protect you. This is not good. And these women, this must stop.
I look everywhere for help. With St. Augustine, I pray, Lord, make me pure. I repeat the words of the Apostle Paul, the good that I would do, I do not. I quote these men in my sermons, and I wonder if people know I'm talking about myself.
You're talking about all of us, Martin, which is why people listen.
I go to Ovid, a Latin poet. He writes, I love all the good things of this life except the evil things I do.
You could always quote more dead people than anyone I ever knew.
I think we're neck and neck.
Could you possibly be referring to the endless notes in all my books? I was told unless they were there, I wouldn't be taken seriously. They're exhausting. I know. You will forgive yourself, unfortunately in many ways. So many of us are lonely, and loneliness sometimes causes us to do things we wish we hadn't done. Even the best of us go to the wrong people. Not all the people in my life have been the right people. But you love your family.
I don't see my children nearly enough.
You love them.
Of course.
You love your wife.
Of course.
You will pray for help, Martin. And you know you're only human. Being human is not a sin.
Adultery is.
Versus despair. Oh, Martin, you, me, everyone, sometimes we seek forgetting and surrender. That's why for over 200 years, Hasidic Jews have danced themselves crazy till they almost fainted, seeking ecstasy, seeking God.
I am too.
I know.
And sometimes I feel him. even when I'm...
It's all right. God is everywhere.
You must hate me for my indiscretions.
What I do hate is that this business pretends to be between you and the FBI, because it is only between you and you. You know you did wrong, you make amends. And now, be with your family, your children.
I see God in their faces.
And in your wife's face, you will repent, and you will go on fighting for what is right. And these women, Martin, this must stop.
I will try.
No! You must do it.
My rabbi is harsh.
You know, rabbi only means teacher. I'm sure you preach the same lesson. And now you must practice what you preach.
If it were easy, I would have stopped already.
I'm not saying it is easy. I'm saying it is necessary. You must stop. February 1st.
Selma, Alabama. I got myself arrested.
What's that, number 18?
No, 17, but who's counting? And this time I'm in with almost 800 people.
We hear many of them are children.
And we still haven't gotten the publicity we need to pressure the president for a voting rights bill.
When only 5% of the Negroes in Alabama get to vote, and if they can find a polling place that's open, they're asked questions that nobody could answer. And on top of that, they're asked to pay a tax for a privilege, which is their constitutional right. When do you get out?
They don't have enough cells to hold us all, so later today.
Good, get out of there.
No, prison's not so bad. And it wouldn't hurt if you got out more often on the front lines yourself.
I think we've already acknowledged that.
The Nazis won't get you.
We hope not.
You're not just going to spend the rest of your whole life hidden away in your study, writing, are you?
Unfortunately, I have an obligation to look dignified.
You have an obligation to make the world a better place. Of course, that might be messy.
Clearly it is.
Some of those favorite prophets of yours, Elijah and Jeremiah, if I'm not mistaken, they aren't known for what they wrote, but for the actions they took.
You are not mistaken. I'm not a prophet. I'm a teacher, a writer, and a rabbi.
You may even be my rabbi, but if you don't take action, you'll wither like the paper in the books you write.
Prison making us a little testy? It was no picnic for me either in Germany when the Gestapo put me there before deporting me back to Poland.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. My father is here. He's always upset when I march and end up in jail. He thinks it's undignified.
What's not dignified is Negroes not having the right to vote, not having a voice in what happens to them.
Yeah, he thinks it's more dignified if we have our issues dealt with in the courts.
That may be. But it's possible that if you don't make yourself visible, you may never get to those courts. Oh, Martin, we all just want you safe. Get out of there, even if it's what your father wants, too.
Selma, 2 days later, February 3rd, Malcolm X is here, preaching the virtues of violence. The peaceful ends, he says, will justify the violent means.
You would lose, and it would be a bloody mess.
He cites the Old Testament, an eye for an eye.
He wants to see the whole world blind.
Yeah. He had to leave before I could see him. At least he spoke with Coretta. He's called me a traitor and a fool. Oh, and Dr. Chicken Wing.
You love your chicken. Take it as a compliment. And eat well so you can be strong. And focus on that new association you founded.
You mean the NAAEC?
The National Association for the Advancement of Eating Chicken. Yes.
You remember?
Somewhere it must be written, thou shalt not forget a good joke.
I can't tell if Malcolm and I are playing good cop, bad cop, and we'll get the results we both want, or if we're exhausting ourselves fighting each other. Some of my Negro brothers call me Uncle Tom.
I'm so sorry. Words can hurt us, but peaceful actions, they can change the world. Remember Gandhi?
Oh, and India. Malcolm might say, it ain't America. Selma, 2 days later. 520 Negroes arrested yesterday for parading without a permit.
Including you, I believe, Dr. King. You made 18.
Hey.
Yeah. In Hebrew, the word for 18 is chai. It also means life. I wish you a long one and a joyful one.
Some of my advisors want us to stop marching, since the sheriff seems determined to keep us from getting in the news. But I think we can't stop. Right, Heschel? I mean, I try to imagine what you would say.
You cannot stop.
We can't. I'll bet when they gave me the Nobel Peace Prize, they never thought that 2 months later, I'd be in jail.
Maybe that's why they gave it to you.
Right after I received the prize, I went to see President Johnson in Washington. And still, he wouldn't commit to the Voting Rights Act.
Yeah.
He actually asked me why I was doing what I'm doing here in Alabama. Said, but you just came back from the mountaintop in Oslo. As if the mountain in Sweden were the one from which Moses saw the promised land.
And you said?
It's a mountainous world, Lyndon. There are a lot of big, big mountains to climb. I hope you'll help me. Get out your gear.
Did you really say that?
I know my nigger place.
I'll bet he helps you anyway.
Yeah. I said, though it was true that I had a mountain experience, I was on my way back to the valley where my people were. I told him, we are going to get a Voting Rights Act.
A week later, February 21st.
Malcolm X assassinated.
16 gunshots at close range.
He was only 39. I always thought I'd never get to 40 myself.
You had better.
20,000 people showed up at his funeral, and the temperature was below zero. He received 6 or 7 death threats a day, like me. His house, too, was bombed.
It's not always a blessing to have so much in common with our friends.
When he was here, he told Coretta he would march with us in Selma, non-violently. 5 days later, Selma. Jimmy Lee Jackson died today. A Vietnam vet. His only crime was being black. Feels like blood on my head.
It's on the head of the crazy state trooper who attacked him for no reason.
Jackson wasn't even at the march. He was at a nearby cafe trying to protect his mother from being beaten. They were beating anyone who wasn't white. She was simply having something to eat, and they shot him twice in the stomach.
I understand the need to protect your mother.
Death is a very high price to pay for a voting rights bill.
God willing, the price is right, and we will have one.
Selma, a week later. My staff is telling me I shouldn't speak tonight. My voice is tired, and they're probably right.
You haven't stopped. You know your voice gets hoarse. You need your voice. The prophets you admire knew that. And we can still hear their voices. Your staff is probably right.
But I said I would go.
You need to rest, because your job always is to speak out loud and clear.
Yeah, I know that. I don't know. You can't all be wrong. The next day, I should have gone last night. Too many people are getting hurt because of me. Now Willie Bolden.
What happened?
He stood in for me last night. I should have been there.
You're exhausted.
Willie goes into the churches before I do. Then he tells me who's there, so I know what kind of speech to give. He was in a gang and can always spot a thug and get him to give up his weapon. I gave him a Bible and a book on Gandhi, and he almost got himself killed.
What happened?
He spoke at the church instead of me. And then as everyone was leaving, the sheriff and the Klan jumped him and started beating everyone. The sheriff picked Willie up by the back of his pants and said, "What are you doing in my town, nigga? Get my niggas all upset? Where's that Martin Luther Coon?" And Willie said, "You mean Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.? He is not here. I'm representing him." And the sheriff stuck his gun in Willie's mouth, cocked the trigger, and said, "Nigga, if you breathe, I'll blow your friggin' head off." Well, the sheriff finally pulled out his gun, breaking most of Willie's teeth, and then he hit him on top of the head.
I'm glad your friend is still alive.
My peaceful warriors are getting wounded and killed. I am not worthy of being their general.
But you are their General, Martin, and this is a terrible war. And we will win it, and somehow or other we will march right into that promised land, and justice will roll down like waters, and righteousness like a mighty stream, because that is God's will, and that is why we are fighting.
2 days later, Bloody Sunday in Selma. And I'm in Atlanta, and I should be in Selma. But I had to speak at my father's church.
You would have been killed. You told me the FBI said they wouldn't protect you.
All anybody meant to do was march peacefully to honor the life of Jimmy Lee Jackson.
I saw the violence on television. Aptly enough, it interrupted the film about the Holocaust.
It was a federal injunction against marching, but people marched toward the bridge peacefully and quietly. And then 100 state troopers stopped them, and the sheriff ordered them to turn back.
We saw the marchers didn't budge, and the troopers attacked them on horseback, swinging bullwhips.
And barbed wire over rubber tubing. Women, men, babies, they didn't care who they hit.
We saw the troopers in their gas masks, heard the coughing and screaming from tear gas they used.
The sheriff ordered that even the children be burned with cattle prods. These people don't want to give us the voting right. These people don't want to give us the right to vote. They want us dead.
At least they're so sick and so crazy, they forgot the television cameras would catch everything. How can the entire country not be up in arms?
A Unitarian minister from Boston was walking with 2 friends back from dinner. A white Unitarian minister. When 4 white men came up behind them, one of them beat the minister's head in with a club. He almost died.
2 days later, New York City. Martin, I'm leading a march on FBI headquarters to protest what happened in Selma and deliver a petition demanding protection for people working for voting rights. There are probably 800 of us.
Good for you.
They won't let us into the building. I'm imagining what you would say.
You stand your ground.
About 60 policemen are trying to stop us. They put barricades up around the entrance.
The power of our prayers is stronger than their barricades.
We held up traffic, walking and singing protest songs. Look what you've done to me.
Just get home alive. Every march, I warn everyone they may not. This is brave work you do.
Not brave, necessary. Wait! They're waving me in.
Yes.
Selma, 8 days later, the Reverend James Reed
The white Unitarian minister from Boston.
died
Died
today. He'd simply been walking down the street.
When a white man beat in his head with a club.
A white minister killed. And finally, the country is up in arms.
4 days later, I need you in Selma.
To march?
Yes, Johnson's allowed it. We have a legal right to march from Selma to Montgomery.
I saw him on television.
When he said, we must, all of us, overcome the crippling legacy of injustice. We shall overcome. I couldn't help it. I cried.
So did I.
I tell Sylvia not to worry. He's sending 1,800 armed Alabama National Guardsmen and the Army.
I'll be in the front row if you want.
I do. Thank you.
You sure you want someone who looks like an old Jew in the front row? Not everybody loves a Jew.
Not everybody loves a Negro. That's a little more hate. We'll give him a little more love.
It will be an honor and a pleasure to be at your third march to that bridge. The first one may have been bloody, but on the second, when only clergy marched, the policemen separated for them as if it were another parting of the Red Sea.
You believe in miracles?
Oh, I do.
We may need one. Selma, the next day, 1965.
These lays, they're beautiful.
Well, someone gives you a lei, you wear it.
Hawaii is a state now. I think of it as patriotic.
Or armor. You could get shot.
You sound like my wife.
And when you're tired, go home.
Thank you, Sylvia. And Martin, you'll be glad to know I didn't remind her the Kabbalah states the redemption of the world always takes precedence over personal safety.
The good move. Let us pray that we'll have both. Amen.
Amen.
Marching. We're an army, like Joshua's before Jericho.
Marching towards victory.
Marching, like the Hebrews out of Egypt.
Out of slavery. I can't believe those white women are actually spitting at the nuns who are with us.
No worse than some of the signs people are carrying. Coons, kikes, and niggers, go home.
May the walls of hate come tumbling down.
And Joshua said, I'm afraid I am not strong enough for this.
And the Lord said, every place that your foot steps, I have given you.
Be strong and have courage, for I am with you everywhere you go. Reminds me of when we walked during the bus boycott in Montgomery. For over a year, Negroes didn't ride buses. We walked everywhere, proud to be walking.
In Poland, when I walked with Hasidic Jews on various occasions, it was always a religious experience.
And now?
And now, no different. 5 days later in New York. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for marching with us.
Thank you for asking me.
A lot of Jews are with us now because you were there. Lawyers, fundraisers, 3,500 people marched. I hope you weren't too exhausted.
I was inspired. Plus, I had an interesting encounter at the airport going home. I stopped at a lunch counter to get something to eat. And the woman behind the counter clearly didn't like me. She said, my mother always told me there was a Santa Claus, and I didn't believe her until now. I smiled and asked her if I could have something to eat. She refused to serve me.
You might as well have been a Negro. What did you say?
I asked if there weren't at least some water in the kitchen. She said there was. Then I asked as sweetly as I could if maybe there weren't also some eggs in the refrigerator. She said there were. Then I asked her if she couldn't boil up the eggs in the water so I could have something to eat.
And she said yes.
No. She said, why should I? What have you ever done for me? Well, I said, I seem to have done you a favor. I proved there was a Santa Claus.
And then you wait.
I did.
And that is how Father Abraham became Father Christmas. 5 months later, August 6th,
President Lyndon Baines Johnson
signed the voting rights bill into law.
Hallelujah!
And about time. Oh, it was a real pleasure seeing him again.
I bet it was.
A toast.
L'chaim, to life.
L'chaim, to life.
A dance. I sometimes wonder if you're not my own black shadow self.
And are you my hidden inner Moses?
Stumbling down Mount Sinai, breaking laws.
Or do we only use each other, as people say, as political convenience?
We do. We use each other.
Political animals.
Intelligent allies.
Maybe even friends.
No.
9 days later, Watts, Los Angeles.
I saw the riots on television.
People are dying. Hundreds injured. More than 600 stores set on fire. When I got up to speak, I was booed by my Negro brothers.
You have given a voice to people who had learned they have to be silent. They just haven't learned yet what words or sounds to use.
But how could they not have learned that only nonviolence will get us where we want to go?
You sound tired.
I give at least a speech a day, back and forth across the country. I don't have time to see my family. I barely have time to eat. Of course I think of stopping all of this. A lot.
We all get depressed.
I don't like to give in to it.
It happens to the best of us. Some days I'm ecstatic, other days I give up. If I didn't allow it, I know I wouldn't have the strength to keep fighting. It's not easy to get the Vatican to overthrow 2,000 years of Christian dogma. Nor is it easy to end 2.5 centuries of Negro slavery in America.
At least we aim high.
Well, should we aim?
Yeah, I was going to live the peaceful life of a simple pastor. Preach a few sermons, maybe write a few articles.
I thought I would be studying Torah all day in Warsaw. And when I wasn't studying, I'd be praying.
Oh, well, you're still praying.
We both are.
Yes.
Come to New York. We'll take a walk in Riverside Park, where I walk with Reinhold. The trees are thick with green.
And then you can say to me the way I know you say to him, do you see that tree?
Yesterday he said to me, you said that as if you had just seen a creature from outer space.
Oh, you love your trees.
Well, I do. And I love our family trees. They too must give us strength.
Roots. And yours go back how many generations of Rabbi?
7. And yours to how many generations of preachers?
5.
Don't forget, they were with you in Watts. All of them.
1966, Alabama.
July 3rd, New York. I've got on my marching boots. We're going to the offices of Senator Robert Kennedy and Senator Jacob Javits to protest the war in Vietnam.
Your feet gets tired, but your soul be rested.
I go in spite of making new enemies every step I take. I can understand why you haven't taken an official stand.
And you've been speaking up against the war for a long time.
You've been speaking up for nonviolence even longer.
You trying to twist my arm?
The arm that linked with mine and Selma? Never.
Of course I believe in nonviolence. If you attack a man, you're attacking God. So, am I a minister of what is holy or a slave of evil? Can there be a middle ground?
Try not to be too hard on yourself.
I just can't afford to appear unpatriotic.
You want what you think is best for your country. That sounds patriotic to me.
My advisors all think I should stick to civil rights. And my white brothers, too, want me to stay down on the plantation of race. Yes, sir. They want me in my place, be a good, well-behaved nigga, sticking only to what I am supposed to know about, as opposed to Vietnam, where too many of my colored brothers are being killed. I don't want the murder of any more innocent people on my head.
No, I on mine.
The issues are complicated. Power is involved, industry, economics, trade. Plus, if I came out against the war, President Johnson would probably never speak to me again. I could jeopardize everything I've worked for.
This is not an easy decision. It was easier for me. I spent 20 years blaming the Germans for being silent while innocent people were being murdered. There was no way I could be silent.
And still your Jewish brothers attack you.
They think I should be spending my time focused on Jews in the Soviet Union and on Israel. But I am not only a Jew, I'm an American, and my country is at war.
I fear for the soul of our country. We're dropping thousands of tons of napalm on the people of Vietnam.
Our soldiers are burning their babies.
I hear you already have over 2,000 members in your organization. Clergy and laymen concerned about Vietnam.
Cal-Cav. I think the initials sound silly. But today, everything's quick. Fast food, instant travel. At the seminary, people take my classes and want a bird's eye view of Judaism. I tell them I'm not a bird.
I was given the Nobel Peace Prize. The path of Jesus is only a path of peace.
You will know what to do.
A month later, Chicago.
New York. Are you okay?
It was just a brick.
It hit your head.
I'm fine, except there wasn't any public coverage. Despite that, for 2 miles, people were screaming at us, throwing bottles at us, and setting cars on fire.
They didn't put a marcher in front of you to protect you?
Yes, but somebody was faster and had good aim.
I heard you fell down.
I was bleeding from my head. Everyone was terrified. I'm fine.
Chicago isn't Selma.
No, it's worse in the north. I'm spending hours trying to convince gang members that nonviolence isn't stupid. Plus, they hate whites, and I only have contempt for the church. We dare them with, "Are you tough enough to do this?"
Are you tough enough to slow down, Dr. King?
Probably a good idea.
But not something you can do?
Not easily.
Didn't your father ever tell you it was all right to do that?
There were other lessons.
Martin, sometimes you have to rest. Besides, being around so much hate can make you sick.
We pray for love before we march. We go with love in our hearts, and we're attacked.
And publicly, you accuse no one. What do you do to get strong again?
Sometimes I pick up your book.
On the prophets? Oh, smart. Be surrounded by other strong men who saw their societies were sick and spoke up to help them be healed.
Who spoke up no matter what.
Yes, but be careful. Remember those 4 little girls blown up for nothing in Sunday school? Your enemies are reckless, hate-filled, and have no conscience.
I survived a crazy lady stabbing me 15 times in the chest. That was 15 years ago at a book signing.
She hated your book that much. I'm just worried that sometimes you put yourself unnecessarily in harm's way.
Don't worry.
Put yourself out there like a moth to a flame.
Well, sometimes a fire needs to be lit.
Just as long as it isn't you who goes up in flames.
1967, April 2nd.
You made the front page.
The New York Times may be happy that I came out against the war. My advisors are not.
You risk a lot.
No, my conscience leaves me no choice.
Your conscience you have to live with.
They're insisting I water down my speech for tomorrow. I'm glad it's you who's introducing me. And at Riverside Church, maybe I'll get a peek at some of those trees.
We're expecting 4,000 people. Probably another time.
I'm sorry Reinhold Niebuhr isn't well enough to come. I would have loved to have heard his speech. No watering down there.
At least he'll write the preface for the pamphlet with our speeches. CalCav is going to print 10,000.
With the speech that it's unlikely I'll water down.
7 weeks later, President Nasser of Egypt.
Defying international law.
He wants to destroy Israel, blockading the Straits of Tiran, cutting Israel off from all of Africa and Asia.
Well, he would be internationally condemned. Reinhold Niebuhr and I are already writing a formal protest for the New York Times.
Thank you.
Israel must survive.
And all I can think of is Isaiah's prayer. Egypt, Assyria, and Israel will be at peace.
And the enmity between the nations will turn to friendship.
And these 3 countries will know they are all God's chosen people.
He wrote that 2,000 years ago.
3 weeks later,
A terrible war, over in 6 days.
a miracle that Israel survived.
But thousands of innocent lives were taken. How can you reconcile that with your belief in nonviolence?
I don't. I can't. I hate that people can't live together peacefully. But Israel was attacked. She fought back, despite the terrible deaths. I'm grateful she survived. It's not easy.
No. I believe in nonviolence, and at the same time, I know my bodyguards carry guns. Maybe the time for nonviolent action is over.
Martin, what's wrong? What is it?
I'm worn out. In just the last 2 days, I've had 10 more death threats. Bomb threats, fire threats, a sniper laying in wait. I'd like to say I'm used to it by now, but I'm not. And they're not only from hate-filled Southerners, they're also from Negro militants. It makes me sad more than it frightens me. Say a prayer, would you, Rabbi, to keep the crazy people with bullets away from my heart.
That heart's too big and too strong to let in a bullet.
What do you do when you're depressed?
I pray. Usually the depression lifts. And you?
The same. In 55, in Montgomery, after Rosa Parks refused to give up her seat on that bus, I'd only preached one sermon, and the death threats began. On my life, my house. My little girl was only 1 month old, and I was afraid. And one night, in the middle of the night, I was at the kitchen table with a cup of coffee, and I was sure I would never have the courage to do the work I knew had to be done. And then I heard the voice of Jesus. And he promised that he would be with me always.
That's what God said to Moses at the burning bush. When Moses asked him his name, God said, Ehiyeh, Asher Ehiyeh. I am there for you, always. Sometimes we need time away for prayer, so that once again we can see and feel the ineffable beauty that is everywhere.
But every Negro that has been beaten, shot, or whose house has been burned, every Negro who has been murdered, hanged, or lynched, these things are not beautiful.
No, they are not. The deaths of 6 million innocent victims in the Holocaust, this is not beautiful. But it's for these victims that we continue to fight.
If I die before you, Rabbi, I want you to speak at my funeral. Just not too many words.
I hate that you're saying at meetings that if anyone should be killed, it should be you, and that you're ready to die.
Well, shouldn't we all be ready? It doesn't mean we're inviting death, but that we've made peace with our lives, that we know we've tried to do good.
You have done good. You've also been saying you've been in the mountaintop, to the mountaintop, and seen the promised land. And you don't mind if you never get there. But Martin, you might. It was Moses who never got to the promised land.
You still did all right.
But I believe we all get glimpses of it right here on earth. I believe it's in the light between the eyes of people who love each other, between parents and the children, between husbands and wives, and between friends.
Yes. Thank you. But I'm not afraid of death. Are you?
I don't know. My grandfather's grandfather believed in reincarnation. He said he remembered being at Mount Sinai when Moses received the Torah.
It's possible my time has come. I mean, if they could kill President Kennedy, they could do...
Stop it, Martin. And I ask you to look into your heart and pray, as I do, that you do not, even unconsciously, choose death. What did Moses hear at Sinai? Choose life.
This is my life, Heschel. And if it includes being shot...
I refuse to listen. I'm older than you, Martin, old enough to be your father. I should die first.
But you're not my father, Father Abraham.
No, I'm not your father, but he or some voice in your head keeps telling you, keep doing more, that it's never enough, and pushing you when you should be resting. All I'm saying is that death seems an extreme measure if all you need is a rest.
Well, didn't your father push you?
Possibly, but he was dead by the time I was 10. Martin, you die before me, and I'll never forgive you.
You'll forgive me.
No, I've had enough unnecessary deaths, and seen enough innocent victims murdered.
It could happen.
Not on my watch.
(1968), January 15th, Atlanta.
New York. Happy birthday, happy birthday, happy birthday to you.
I made it to 39.
Congratulations. How was the party?
Oh, my friends gave me a container of shoestring potatoes in case I needed extra shoelaces in jail.
Better you should eat your potatoes.
And I got a special cup with President Johnson's face on it
But
for the war on poverty. Not that he's talking to me anymore. Everybody dropped in a few coins.
I hope it's a big cup.
And what I really want?
Yes?
A march in Washington to protest the war in Vietnam at Arlington National Cemetery.
You can count on me for the front row.
The perfect birthday present.
My pleasure.
And
An
an honor.
honor.
3 weeks later.
Arlington National Cemetery.
You got here just in time.
What's wrong?
Guess.
They found bombs behind the headstones?
Not yet.
Men with tear gas on the other side of the gates?
No, nothing that dramatic.
Then you can tell me.
We're not allowed to use the amphitheater.
Not allowed to use it to honor the dead in a national cemetery?
You can stand outside in front of the tomb of the unknown soldier.
Maybe it's better. We are honoring unknown soldiers. A sunny,
Clear day.
spiritual, and moral consciousness at work
You can hear the clicking of heels.
for the changing of the guard.
Look at the sunlight shining off the bishop's cross.
The rabbi is carrying his Torah so tightly it could be a part of his body.
And at first you thought we shouldn't have a Torah.
It seemed a secular demonstration.
On the other hand, can you really separate spirit from action?
Can I? No. Can you?
Well, certainly not today.
May our marching help America to get her conscience back.
And the millions of dollars we are spending on an immoral war, thousands of miles away, while every night in America 1 million children go to sleep hungry.
Flaunt that flag.
8 abreast, there must be 2,000 people marching behind us. You're not tired?
No, I'm just glad that I'm not carrying the Torah.
It looks heavy.
Very heavy.
You hold on tight, Rabbi.
You hold on, Reverend.
We're standing like a mountain, you and me.
You holding me up?
No, you're holding me up.
White tombstones, row after row.
Mainly crosses, but a few stars of David. Let's stop and take a moment of silence to honor the dead.
Then the 22nd Psalm.
I am poured out like water, and all my bones are out of joint.
My heart is like wax. It is melted within my breast.
A week later,
That march went well.
the press was at least somewhat respectful.
On the other hand, I received hundreds of letters from Orthodox Jews from all over the world objecting to my marching next to a Torah.
On what grounds?
On what grounds? Not the holy ground on which we walked. And it was I who first said that carrying a Torah was a bad idea. But then we all decided it was a good idea because the bishop was going to be carrying a cross in the front row, and a Jew carrying a Torah seemed better than Jews marching behind a cross. I'm accused of desecrating the Torah. You can't bring a Torah into a cemetery. It's against Jewish law. It's blasphemy. I will dig through as much Jewish law as I must to prove we were justified.
It's just the kind of excavation you love.
What is higher than the laws of Torah? Compassionate and ethical actions. That for me is Torah.
But you went against Jewish law.
It probably depends on how you read the law. The Jewish mind questions, remember, questions and reevaluates and weighs and asks and answers and questions again and again. I'll be up all night looking for proof we did not.
We don't sleep much, do we?
But we do good work.
2 days later, what did you find?
6 examples in Jewish law when you can bring a Torah into a cemetery.
Good work, Sherlock. 6?
1, under extraordinary circumstances, our march was extraordinary. 2, it says in the Bible you can carry a Torah into a cemetery. if it is 4 cubits away from the dead. Ours was. You know, give a cubit more or less. 3, Jewish law says you may not read from the Torah in a cemetery. It says nothing about if you can carry one. 4, it turns out these Jewish laws were for Jewish cemeteries. This was not an entirely Jewish cemetery. I'm exhausted.
Go get some sleep.
5 weeks later, upstate New York, Concord Hotel. The annual convention of the Rabbinical Assembly.
Happy birthday to you.
I'm not 39. No, sounds old. 60 sounds old.
No, not you.
Thank you for your keynote address.
I'd have given 60 keynote addresses to have heard those 1,000 rabbis singing, "We shall overcome," in Hebrew.
The language of the prophets.
I did think your introduction of me was a little over the top.
Because I called you a prophet that I believe God has sent to save America?
For example,
There's not even an instance of me getting carried away. It's what I believe. Though I'm afraid your acknowledgement was hardly perfect.
because I called you a truly great prophet.
You didn't need the word great. If a prophet isn't great,
He isn't a prophet.
Never mind. You're invited to our Seder anyway. Passover's in 3 weeks, April 12th. Sylvia and I would love you to come.
Jesus' Last Supper.
Are we a little gloomy today? No, consider it your first supper at our home.
It's a wonderful invitation. April 12th.
Your whole family.
The whole family?
We're celebrating the freeing of 3 million slaves. 1 million not even Jewish. We can certainly accommodate 5 more at the table.
2 days later. April 3rd, Memphis, 11:30 p.m.
New York, 10:30.
We don't sleep much.
How are you?
Been better, but my speech went wrong.
Are you sick, depressed, or just exhausted?
Probably all 3. Even my staff thought I should stay in Atlanta, but the doctors say I'm fine.
But the doctors know.
How can I be fine when there are 1,300 sanitation workers on strike there, making less than what they'd be getting on welfare?
That's a big mess to clean up.
Yes, it's worse than a mess. 2 Negro workers were crushed to death in the back of their truck because in a rainstorm, their white co-workers wouldn't let them sit up front.
That's what racism is. Human beings not treating each other as human beings.
In last week's march here, no wonder there's a federal injunction. Some of the marchers were actually paid to throw bricks. I can't be a part of something like that.
No, you can't.
I almost feel irrelevant with my old-fashioned ideas of nonviolence. Plus, I have trouble sleeping. I'm angry at my speechwriters. I can't find the right words myself. I'm convinced the FBI will finally get me, and I don't want to do this anymore.
That's all? You need a rest. I'll quote Isaiah. Take a rest. Close enough? Do you really have to fight for every cause every time you see?
Look, I was brought up on Jesus' story of the Good Samaritan, who would never ask, if I help these workers, what will happen to me? I have to ask, if I don't help them, what will happen to them?
I don't know, Martin. Someone else might help them.
And you, aren't you exhausted? Fighting for Israel, for civil rights, for the Jews in Russia. You never stop writing. How can you not be?
It isn't easy. But I try to remember that the journey to the promised land was full of despair, and that joy must be my beacon. And I asked.
In my speech tonight, I talked about the Hebrew slaves in Egypt, and that as long as they fought amongst themselves, they would have no hope of ever leaving. I remember the first speech I heard you give. You said the first conference on race and religion was in Egypt, but that in America, Pharaoh was still alive and we still had slaves.
True today, but better than it was.
Still, some of the new laws may as well be on blank pieces of paper.
That paper comes from trees. Don't knock my trees.
Sometimes they grow too slowly.
Sometimes. Martin, I know sometimes you feel you take 3 steps forward and sometimes 2 steps back, or even 3, sometimes 4. But since you started, it's been 1,000 steps forward, thousands of people stepping, marching. How many people have marched? How many steps is that? Do you know how many steps backwards the Jews have endured? How many temples destroyed? How many millions killed? And for how many centuries? Talk about steps backwards. But we're still here. And my guess is, and in part because of you, your Negro brothers will flourish here in America for a very long time to come.
You do tend to go on.
And you still talk to me.
Maybe that's why.
I heard that tonight you said your eyes had seen the glory of the coming of the Lord. That's a lot of glory to see, Martin. Even Moses had to turn away his face at Sinai. Just be careful, all right?
Don't worry, Heschel. I'll be fine.
Of course you'll be fine. And in a week, you'll come for Seder. You'll drink too much wine, I hope. And the matzah will be like a brick in your stomach. But it will be better than a brick at your head. And we'll celebrate the freeing of the slaves. Now you should sleep.
Tomorrow, we overturn the injunction.
Yes. But now sleep, my friend. Sleep. The next day, April 4th, at 7 p.m., the Reverend Martin Luther King Jr. was shot at the Lorraine Hotel in Memphis, Tennessee. He died in St. Joseph's Hospital from a gunshot wound in his neck. A week before the Passover Seder he had wanted to attend at my home. He was 39 years old. Coretta King, his widow, called to ask me to speak at his funeral. Of course I will. He was my friend.
Four years later, December 23rd, 1972, Rabbi Abraham Joshua Heschel died peacefully in his sleep tonight in his apartment in New York City. He was 65 years old, and he died on the Sabbath. He had just finished his last book, aptly enough called A Passion for Truth. My widow, Coretta Scott King, will speak at his memorial in New York. He was my friend.